Hey, thank you very much for meeting with us today to go through building a strong brand identity for your school or nursery. Um, my name is James Digby. I'm the MD of Bright. We are a marketing agency for the education sector. We ran about 5,000 campaigns last year. So a lot of what we're talking about today will be based on that data, the impact of different changes to branding. We very much believe in tracking results. So we're looking at kind of the impact on some of the branding changes that people might have taken over the last 12 months. We have been doing this for, I guess, 24 years now rather than 23 years. So we've got a lot of knowledge about the sector behind us. But additionally, we're very aware that there have been a number of changes in the last 12 months and maybe even the last 5 years that have dramatically changed the way the education sector looks at branding, looks at the way they market themselves, and also looks at the way you might consider a brand to be pretty strong or particularly reputational in nature. So if you have any questions, feel free to write a question in the box in the bottom right hand corner. There will also be some time at the end of the session just for me to answer any questions you might have. And if you're really struggling to see how we can apply some of the things that we're talking about today to your organization, feel free to send me an email when we share the recording, and I'll come back and I'll book in a short call or Teams meeting, and we can go through that in a bit more detail. In terms of the challenges everybody's faced, I think that the last 5 years have been particularly difficult. But in terms of branding, we've seen a real shift in the last 6 months or so. I think a lot of people post-COVID, they looked at the way they spent money, they looked at the way they attracted people to their organization, and they looked at their budgets to make them more efficient. What we've seen in the last 6 months in terms of branding, there's been a real shift in terms of the direction that people take their positioning. Some people who have perhaps been single-sex schools are now co-ed. Some schools that thought they'd never be part of a trust are now part of a trust. Nurseries that perhaps started out small have grown into big groups, and big groups have cut back to be more efficient. There's been a variety of different changes, and each of these changes have impacted very heavily on brand. For me, I think brand is going to be exceptionally important. Looking at 2024 and the things that went on in 2024, I think it's going to be really important that 2025 becomes a year where people really clearly position themselves with something that makes them different, but with a brand that is very open and honest. And I think that's going to be the secret to this year. Those that can project a brand image that people trust will be doing better than everyone else. So brand for different people can be different things. I think even myself, sometimes I can quite easily talk about brand in different contexts and imply or say it means something slightly different. But for the point of clarity today, we're going to be talking about brand in terms of using it as this nice clean acronym. So it's really a master plan of that experience that your customers will have. So that might be parents, that might be pupils, it might be sixth formers, it might be customers or clients, however you'd like to call them. But it is this idea of providing some form of consistency in terms of that experience. So if you're a school, for example, it might be that the experience has some kind of consistency across the other schools in terms of the trust that you're part of, or if you're a school with a senior school and a sixth form, it might be that there's some kind of commonality in terms of the experience that parents have or potential parents have, potential students have when they engage with your brand. I think that consistency part for me is really, really important. And one of the reasons it's really important is we know that there's been about a 50% increase in the last 12 months in terms of the number of touch points that potential customers have to have before they engage with you as an organization. So it's up to about 15 touch points with your brand before they start to um, before you start to kind of see any engagement. Um, where that messaging is not consistent, those touch points get into 20, 30 different levels. And that's even where you've got some level of consistency. So to optimize it, to try and keep those touch points as low as possible and therefore reduce your marketing spend, really, really important that your messaging is very consistent. So plan that before you start anything else. Um, there's also something quite psychological, I think, about you as a school or you as the business and that customer. I think I tend to think of this relationship in terms of the businesses and the services and the products that I engage with and the brands that feel important to me. Um, it goes beyond that business to business relationship that sometimes you can have, even as a parent with a school. It can sometimes feel like it's quite a transactional experience. And it takes those thoughts and feelings and it builds it into something that you can market out. So it's worth in the back of your head when you're talking about brand, just thinking about the feelings that you'll be generating within the people that you're reaching out to. And going back to my last slide, how can you make those things genuine and honest? How are they actually things that current parents and people's experience? It's also a form of agreement. We have seen a number of people that we started to work with struggle. Potentially, they've taken over as, say, a marketing director or a business manager for a school or an independent school or trust or whatever it might be. Um, and they have struggled because previous um, iterations of their role have perhaps oversold the experience that you're going to get as a parent or a child or a student, whatever it might be. And it's very difficult when you're branding and you're positioning yourselves. It's very difficult to come back from that because what you'll start to find is you very quickly get negative reviews. You have an amazing experience during the marketing, during your visits to your website. They watch videos, they get a sense of what it's like to be there, and the care and attention that you're going to be giving to people. But if that doesn't match reality, that's a very fast track way to get negative reviews and also very unhappy parents, children, students, customers for your school or nursery. Um, Sometimes if you are perhaps family run as a group of nurseries, or you've been there as part of big changes within your school, sometimes it's quite natural for you to get the nature of your organization across to people, and sometimes that takes a little bit more work. Personally, I think even where you've got a good feel for your school or nursery, that emotional element, I'd still go and talk to people. I'd still find out what the current parents and pupils and students, what they think, but also find out what your colleagues find out how it differs from senior leadership all the way down to people that have just joined your organization, because that emotional connection and that emotional connection in terms of your brand can only really be built on an honest foundation if you have researched it. It also needs to be your USP. So try and make yourself as distinctive as possible. We keep a track of our clients' competitors. We keep a track of how it changes, how they're positioning themselves. It's really important to do that. You can do that very simply in a spreadsheet, but it really helps you to identify why you're unique. And there might be some elements that you already do really, really well, and you don't quite realize how important they are until you look at other people's websites, look at other people's branding and marketing. So we talked a little bit about like the importance for 2025 in terms of branding. But each of the different elements you're going to have in your marketing toolkit are going to be applying that branding in slightly different ways. You'd hope the messaging is consistent. If it's not, probably need to go back and review that. But I would always start with your website. So very high level things to consider are kind of consistent language and tone, highlighting your core values and unique selling points, and ensuring that everything visually looks the same. However, in terms of applying that brand, our experience when we've built websites for clients, and we've built one recently for Bright, um, is that it's a really good opportunity for you to have a structured way of reconsidering your brand. Um, and I think if anybody was to take away just one point from today, I think that would be the thing that I would say that I've learned the most in the last 6 months, that it can be really overwhelming to review all of your brand, all of the touch points of your brand. Reviewing your website and looking at how you're going to apply your brand can be really, really useful. And the way that I'll do that is I'll do a competitor analysis. I would look at what you need to have on your website, how you need to position your brand, what the tone of voice is going to be, what your values are, what your unique selling points are. And then I would start to build out some customer journeys. In doing that, I always find that it gives me a very structured way to consider what's important to our brand, what's important for people to feel when they connect with us as a brand. Um, and it just reduces the feel of being overwhelmed in terms of where to start with branding. Um, to be perfectly honest, considering we do a lot of branding for other people, I do know that it is difficult when you're really close to the brand. It's very difficult to see it with a new pair of eyes. So if you need some help with that, do let us know. The next bit is about social media. Um, the difficulty I find with social media in the last year or two has been that a number of our clients have really struggled to consistently get their branding across, and their brand messaging, their USPs in their social media. Um, the one thing that I would always say is better to do 20 minutes a day of social media than it is to do an hour or 2 hours a week or every other week. If you do a little bit at a day, each day, you can actually achieve quite a bit more. It stops you kind of having periods where your social media is really busy and then suddenly very quiet. Um, and in terms of the algorithms, it also helps to keep your brand at the top of search results, engagement, and so on and so forth, because you're regularly and consistently posting rather than doing it in a batch. So when you're creating your new guidelines for your branding or updating the ones that you currently have, do consider how to get this across in your social media. And I would call that a social media style guide. It should be something that you can hand across to anybody in your team that is reasonably good with social media, and they can apply that style and that feel to your social media. It's also significantly easier where you've got clear brand guidelines that talk about your USPs and um, your emotions that you're trying to get across. Is a lot easier for people to pick relevant topics. So if one of your unique USPs is about having a great curriculum, for example, they can be making sure that 1/3 of content is about your curriculum, the impact of your curriculum, um, and what your plans are for curriculum in the future. It narrows down that overwhelming feeling that sometimes you can have with social media in terms of what is that messaging that we should be repeating out. So schedule regular, well-aligned content, and very quickly you'll start to build up a very clear brand image and reputation on whichever social media platforms you're using. Um, in terms of hashtags, if you're going to use them, they do have some advantages, but if you are going to use them, just make sure that they're consistent. That can be quite a nice way to group your content together, and it can be quite a nice way for people to engage with you. If you go from using it for some posts and not using it for others, or you're using different hashtags for different things, it can lose all of the benefits that you get with them. And it definitely is going to lose that ability to tie together your content in a nice, clean way. So, marketing materials, as you can see from hopefully from the previous slide, you can start to kind of build a um, a brand image and a brand representation that has multiple touch points but feels the same. So using templates is a great way to do this because you can then edit those templates for flyers, for example, brochures, PDF documents, whatever it might be. The main thing is that if somebody is to download a guide about your school, download a guide about your nursery, they're going to follow you on social media, they're going to receive links through to your website and emails. Those touch points need to be getting the same messages across. At a minimum, expect people to kind of have those 10 to 15 touch points, and consider the fact that you're going to be actually reducing the number of those touch points down quite significantly. If you can be consistently repeating, I would say about 3 core USPs. That's the best way to reduce down the number of touch points that you need to have. And then it might sound obvious, but just make sure that any of the design elements are the same. Sadly, what you'll see is if you've got a change in terms of staff looking after this, there will be a bit of a shift. So if there's going to be a shift, my recommendation would be that's a good chance to review your brand so that you can put out a refreshed brand image without it being quite a messy transition period. And very happy to talk to anybody about that if that's the situation that they're in. We would always be getting employee input into branding that we do. Um, in terms of kind of activating that brand, is also important when you're marketing out your updated brand to get feedback from current members of staff, current stakeholders, potentially even current customers, so current parents, pupils, and find out what they think. You'll find that even in asking people for their feedback, even if they don't get a chance to fill in a survey, for example, the fact that you're asking them for that really can help in terms of getting them to engage with your content as a brand. Gather that feedback, try and group it, try and segment the feedback that you're having. Do you have governors? Do you have SLT? Do you have staff? Do you have parents? Whatever it might be, try and find the common feedback that people are giving and then group it together and see um, how that links to your target audience. Then adjust your messaging based on that feedback and adjust your messaging based on the results that you get from platforms like Google Analytics and using things like Google Tag Manager. Are the changes that you're making to your branding, are the times that you're focusing on a particular brand element, are they converting people better or worse than you were before? Are they converting better or worse than other USPs? If you had 3 USPs, for example, I really like being able to run 3 different campaigns, one for each USP, so that you can see which one is linking with people emotionally, which one's linking with people in terms of getting their engagement, so that I can perhaps be putting more money behind that and getting a better return on investment for my spend. So I'm going to share across the recording of the session, so I don't expect everybody to be able to read this through, but the things that we're seeing that I will be that I would be recommending to you in terms of considering refreshing your brand or even kind of starting again with your brand. Some of the things that I'd really kind of pick out here would be the trust and credibility element. It's really important at the moment to have that trust and credibility. People are less engaged with businesses and organizations, and they're more engaged with that human element at the moment. If you can get that across, the opposite side of that is the emotional connection that will start to build. And if you can get that emotional connection, you can then start to have an increased reputation, an improved reputation, and one that when you put out information about, say, open days or visits or conversations, people are more likely to respond to, more likely to engage with. Um, it does take time. Each of these things that you start to improve might improve traffic, engagement, conversion rates by only a little bit. But over the course of a year, as you refine that brand, it will have a significant impact. Just bear in mind that there'll be that delay of getting people to have enough touch points to actually convert them into contacting you. So, what trends are we seeing in branding at the moment? Um, I think tradition and nostalgia are big elements that you typically see within brand where there's a vast quantity of change and impact in people's lives. I think that nobody can deny the fact that the last year, or deny the fact that even the last few years since the pandemic, have been giant changes for people. There's been a massive impact. Whether you're attracting staff using your brand, whether you're attracting parents, whether you're attracting customers, whether you're attracting whoever it might be, um, you can boost your emotional connection by using tradition and nostalgia. Using a bit of history, for example, if you've got that history to your organization, is really useful. I've seen lots of posts about kind of 50 years ago, our nursery was doing X, Y, and Z. To be able to kind of get these things across, it's not just something that works well for schools, it's something that works well for nurseries as well. Um, People really want to connect with brands that have clear, true values, and a mission, something that they're aiming for, something that they're working for. They feel at the moment that those things provide them with more of an emotional connection, but also there's a feeling there that a brand that genuinely has a clear direction will be a brand that's constantly improving, trying to get somewhere, even if that mission might be difficult or impossible to fill. So it might be you're a small group of three nurseries, you might be trying to be the biggest, your mission might be to be the biggest nursery group in the UK, with a particular feel for local regional differences, whatever your mission might be. Even if it is impossible for people to achieve, it's still really good to have a direction to be pushing towards. Um, there is there is a shift here to kind of focus more on flexibility. Um, the word flexibility keeps coming up in terms of attracting staff. People want to be able to work flexibly in terms of learning. um, People are still interested in the ability to have remote learning at short notice, or to have support when children are working from home. Um, so do consider what flexibility and adaptability you can have as a brand, but also kind of consider how um, you're going to apply that to your approach to marketing. So how can you, as business leaders or marketing experts, how can you apply flexibility to the way that you market, so that if there is a change in 6 months' time, say you're an independent school, say something happens with VAT again, or whatever might happen with the government, what are you going to do? How are you going to quickly shift your messaging? And then try and get people to um, implement their own form of that branding. So, can you get parents? Can you get students? Can you get alumni to contribute their own content, um, so that you can kind of back up that sense of authentic branding? This is surprisingly difficult to do. I have actually seen the most successful areas be where they've got alumni of particular kind of age groups, typically those people that are starting to have children of their own, starting to kind of look back on some of that nostalgic feeling of, oh, I used to go to that school, I'll follow them, I'll see how they're going, um, to kind of be able to get those people to share content. And oddly, that's been on quite random platforms like LinkedIn, for example, where you can mark yourself as alumni. And I think it's quite a nice way and a nice opportunity to start to engage with those people. I'm not going to talk about being authentic too much. But one note I would say here is that when you're considering your values, don't over polish them. Make sure that they're genuine, but also make sure that they're in plain, clear English so that people can get an idea of your culture. You can do things like achievements, so the things that you go after in terms of recognition as a organization or a business. They've got to be relevant to your target audience. Um, I think it's nice to get some kind of form of achievement in general, um, but if it's not kind of repeating that brand message, don't apply for that award. Don't highlight that achievement on social media, whatever it might be. We're also seeing that some people are a little bit more open to experimental branding, trying things that are completely different. Um, and some of that even comes with unique experiences and doesn't have to be completely crazy. Um, it might just be introducing something like a trial day that's focused on a particular area. So it might be um, for children that are really interested in STEM, they can come along to your school or they can come across to your nursery, and you'll have a morning or you have a couple of hours where they can take part um, in something that is focused on that. So that's a key element of your brand. You could be considering how you could get that across in something quite interesting, and then you can share video clips from that to repeat that messaging across social media. Um, the most engaged with content at the moment is video, but we are seeing an increase in things like quizzes, polls, and even a recurrence of, you might be sick of these phrases, but kind of virtual open days, for example, from pandemic days. We are seeing some of those things come back. So anything you can do to provide a more interactive experience for people that is easy to engage with, then the better. Um, if you have video content and it's working, that's great. If you don't, start with video content. If you want to kind of take that next step, infographics can be a brilliant way to show scale. They can be a brilliant way to show achievements. And visually, they're a lot more engaging rather than just saying we've been doing X, Y, and Z for 15 years or we've supported 20,000 students, whatever the numbers might be. Infographics and connecting those to your values and how you've been able to achieve whatever that might be is a brilliant way to increase engagement with your branding, and it's increasingly popular on social media as well. So it's very difficult, I think, to find time to rebrand. You're in a session right now, and some of these things you might be thinking, "Oh, it'd be great to be able to do that," but in reality, we don't have the time. So I think it is important every year to consider what you need to be changing in terms of your brand. Has the market changed? Has your situation changed? Have your values changed, perhaps? Has your mission changed? Hopefully, those big key things haven't, but are you going in a slightly different direction? I would be talking to stakeholders regularly throughout the year about what they like and dislike about your brand. I'd be talking to potential customers when they come in, but also those people that don't engage with your brand. So you can use simple plugins for your website to pop up when people are exiting your website. Have your conversion rates gone down? You will find that external things influence your conversion rates, but if they have gone down noticeably, do consider whether this is now time to kind of rebrand and reposition yourself. And then do you feel proud of your branding? Do you feel proud when you are putting together templates, when you're promoting your organization out? Or do you look at it and think, our competitors have it easier because they've got better branding? Um, and then when you're talking to people that perhaps have engaged with your brand, say 6 months ago, do they remember that? Do they remember the key messaging? Do they remember your mission? Do they remember your values? If they can't, it could be one of two things. It could be that it's not a memorable brand, but it also could be an issue of the fact that you're not getting in front of them enough times. And then if you're looking to grow rather than kind of maintain things, you might want to be kind of repositioning your brand slightly to be able to speed up that growth. And then where would I start from that point? Say I go through that, and I think our local three competitors are doing a lot better because of their branding. If I've decided to rebrand, I would be defining the vision and the goals. for my organization. I'd be revisiting that vision statement before I do anything. If you've got organizational goals or business goals, I'd be making sure that it's linked to that. So we need to increase revenue by us, or we need to take 20% more students in the next 7 years, whatever it might be, and then link that to your branding goals. Understand your competition before you do anything, understand what they do well, understand what they don't do well, understand where they're perhaps taking potential parents, customers, whoever it might be from you, and what you can do to counteract it, and where there might be gaps in the marketplace. Build customer profiles, build personas, segment people into different groups, 3 at a time, ideally. So these people are different socioeconomic groups, these people live in different areas. Segment as many times as possible so that you can understand um, what the core of your target audience is about, but also so that you could be targeting people based on those segmentations. Get to know your customers as well as you can through surveys, through talking to them, through engaging with the people that are connecting with them. So if you have somebody perhaps that works in admissions, talk to them regularly about what they're seeing, or have some kind of formal structure for them to be able to record that. And then map those people's behavior. Can you segment people into people that take a long time to pick whether you're the right school or nursery, and those that make an instant decision? What branding needs to go to those people that need to make a really considered decision, and those people that perhaps make a snap decision? How do they behave when they engage with your brand? Can you target people that visit only one page on your website compared to those that visit 10? And then start formulating your personality for your brand across that understanding, so that you know that it's built on solid foundations. Um, and then keep it very simple in terms of your process. I appreciate there'll be a lot of steps within each of these things, but go from research into the creative elements, and make sure at that stage you're continuing to get input in from the right people. It's got to be a right balance there. You don't want millions of people saying that they like a slightly different blue, but you also don't want people kind of giving feedback once you're implementing, that needs to change everything that you have you put together at that creative stage. And then in the implementation, make sure that you're getting regular feedback, especially if you've been a little bit in your own bubble trying to juggle everything and rebranding. It's really important with that implementation, um, that your stakeholders are kind of kept up to date, but they've also got clear channels to be able to kind of give you feedback. So that comes to the end of the session today. Thank you all very much for attending. Appreciate it on a Monday morning. It's often hard to find time. But we've got plenty of time now if anybody has any questions. So there should be a chat window in the bottom right. So yeah, feel free to ask me any questions you might have.